My name is former Congressman Pat Meehan from Pennsylvania, and I am a close associate with the American Sikh Caucus and Sikhs across the United States who look at the importance of the dates of June 6th to 8th for the Sikh diaspora across the world, as they represent the days of death and torture inside the armistice during a period of significant Sikh worship. And to this day, across the world, people pay attention to the suffering and recognize the call for religious freedom and the absence for oppression, and also the idea that violence in any form is something that we should be looking to put an end to. We are gathered today as not just representatives from the Sikh community, but a broader community of interfaith representatives from multiple faiths joined in this recognition and service at the nation's capital. Let me thank two people in particular for being here, and I'm going to recognize them right away. Congressman David Valadao, who is the co-chairman of the American Sikh Caucus, and Congresswoman Mary Gay Scanlon from Pennsylvania, who has been a very strong supporter of Sikhs in Pennsylvania and across the country. So let me first introduce, because he is the co-chair, Congressman Valadao, for a couple of quick words.
My name is David Valadao. I represent California's 21st Congressional District, the Central Valley of California. And I have the honor of representing one of the most diverse communities in the country. And it's something I take a lot of pride in. But one thing that comes with a diverse community, you obviously have different faiths, you have a lot of different backgrounds. And something I think that, and I think most Americans would agree, is that we like diversity. We like the fact that we have all these different cultures coming to our country, and I think that's one of the things that makes our country so great. But it's also something we have to protect. And so when you see people from all different faiths being attacked or being persecuted because of their beliefs, it's something that we obviously all have to stand together. And we're here, Republicans and Democrats, on the same side of this issue because it's important. We have to defend people's ability to practice their faiths and what they see fit. And it's something that it's a pleasure to see this group here together, but it's something we have to continue to do and continue to fight for to make sure that this country continues to be free for all, so they have the opportunity to live the lives that they see fit. And it's something that is important to all of us. So thank you for the opportunity, and thank you, Pat, for having me here.
Hi, I'm Mary Gay Scanlon, Congresswoman from southeastern Pennsylvania, Philadelphia and suburbs. I represent PA 5. I'm so thankful to my Sikh constituents for inviting me to join you here today. Obviously, I completely share the emphasis on nonviolence and the fact that everyone should be free from violence as we observe the anniversary of the attack in the temple, but also we're joined by members of the Ukrainian community, the Rohingya community. And of course, we're here during Gun Violence Prevention Month on the eve, or actually just hours from voting on a package of gun violence prevention bills in front of the US Capitol, which has been the scene of violence in just the last year and a half. So I come from a district where Martin Luther King began his theology studies at the Crozier Seminary in Chester, Pennsylvania, where he formed his initial beliefs and his will to move forward with nonviolence as the way to affect change. And we all need to recommit ourselves to that, and I'm so proud to be with this group here today. Thank you.
It's a great pleasure to be here on the Hill once again. Every June we commemorate those who have faced the violence by the state of India and state-led repression in 1984. But I think this year it's a great opportunity to be with other communities as well. In the UN structure, we see all sorts of violence, whether it's a state-led repression, whether it's a violence against women, whether it's violence against people of no faith. Because when we talk about, it's not only the faith communities which need to come together, but also the people who have no faith. We see it all over the place. And I think one of the reasons we do is that the people who have to take people's right away, the people who violates the human rights, all the good people and the people who stand with each other, they don't convert into action. So I think coming together with the various faith communities and the people who are facing the atrocity crimes across the world is a great initiative. And I must compliment Congressman Patrick Meehan that it was when you had various congressional briefings here as the co-chair of the American Sikh Caucus. We talked about the issues faced by the Rohingya community, and that was in 2016 when nobody was talking about it. We talked about the situation of Muslims in China, and obviously the state-led repression against the Sikhs. I think Sikh Caucus must be complimented that they have felt the pain, because this is the pain the Sikhs have gone through themselves. First in 1955 when the Golden Temple or Darbar Sahib was attacked by the Indian police, and then 1984 it was razed to ground, and Indian Army's unprecedented action, and later obviously the Sikh genocide. Our message should be that we stand together with each other, because one violence or violation of human rights feeds to another. If the world would have recognized the violence and atrocities committed by the Indian state in 1984, we wouldn't had the same atrocity done in Bosnia, Herzegovina, and we wouldn't have seen the same atrocities being committed with Rohingyas and what's happening in Ukraine. I want to thank the Ukrainian community and want to assure them that we all stand shoulder to shoulder with you. We feel your pain and anguish, and whatever we can do in our individual capacities and as our community, we must do that, and we will do that. I think it is time to ask the Congress and the congressmen to, I mean, obviously it's great what you're doing at the moment, but that needs to be tightened further. And I think Russia has miscalculated the response of the community and of the world. But again, I mean, as humans, the memories fade out, priority changes. But resolving conflict everywhere and holding the perpetrator of violence to accountability should be our priority, whether that is US Congress or us as responsible citizens. And thank you all.
Thank you so much for having me here. It is an honor for me to represent my community, and I'm grateful for the opportunity that was given to me by the organizer and the congressman. Rohingya community is a religious minority in Myanmar, and we have been persecuted by the government of Myanmar, the military, since 1970, and the persecution has been going on since then. We have been raped, killed, murdered, burned, tortured, and because of this, many people was expelled from the country, many was displaced inside the country, and many was forced to flee from the country and seek refuge in the neighbor country. We have over 1 million Rohingya refugees seeking refuge in Bangladesh camp, which is known as world's largest refugee camps in the world, where these people are living in a very crowded, unsanitized situations, which there is no security, no livelihoods, no future, no educations. Not only that, people have been fleeing, like I mentioned, into the neighbor countries, like including in Malaysia. We have over 200,000 Rohingyas living in Malaysia, again with no security, no future, no recognitions. And people inside the Myanmar who are still there, Rohingya are still there, they are still facing the genocide that has been done by the Myanmar military. Our people still been facing persecution, still fear of life, the fear of being killed, being raped every day. My family is still there. When I was about 5 years old, I was in same situation, were expelled from my country and was forced to seek refuge in a different country, which is in Malaysia. And genocide have separated our family, have destroyed our futures. And I would like to bring these situations, our situations, in front of the world, requesting justice for us, a safe return to our country, which is repatriations from Bangladesh and from the neighbor countries that we are seeking refuge. We would like to seek humanitarian access to the Bangladesh camps, where people are living there in a very difficult, dangerous situations. And we would like US to facilitate the peace building in my country, Burma, which is Myanmar, among us. at the same time support our case in ICG to achieve justice for my people. Thank you.
My name is Irene Chalupa, and I'm a member of the Ukrainian National Women's League of America, a group that is very, very active today in providing humanitarian support and aid to Ukraine, particularly for military hospitals. As you can well imagine, the number of casualties, the number of injured, the number of dead is very, very high, and Ukraine is taking a huge hit from a very powerful, very violent, and very ugly enemy. We're talking about violence, stopping violence. Well, we're living at a time where the most egregious, horrible, hateful violence, probably since World War I, that we've seen is being unleashed smack dab in the middle of Europe. Russia seems to be completely out of control, and the support that Ukraine is getting from the West always seems to come a little too late. I often think that if these big guns that Ukraine has been promised had been delivered before the war even began, perhaps we wouldn't be having these huge numbers of casualties and a huge humanitarian crisis and a bloodbath in the center of Europe. I would like to thank the Sikh community for being extremely, not just sympathetic, but very helpful and instrumental in helping Ukraine in this moment of crisis. It was a very pleasant surprise for me. I didn't know that the Sikh community was so actively involved through their various NGOs, and it was a pleasure for me to be invited to today's event by Hayardal Singh, and he heads up an NGO that has been extremely active in Ukraine. He's been there, and he can tell you firsthand what violence, what imperialistic, chauvinistic Russian violence does to Ukraine, its infrastructure, and its people. So I wish the Sikhs of the world peace. I wish you strength. I hope you do achieve statehood and independence. This is a dream of all enslaved people. Self-determination is a God-given right. It's an inalienable right, and we stand with you, and we thank you for your support.
As we gathered here today in the backdrop of Capitol Hill, where our lawmakers are discussing and going over the plans how to deal with a totalitarian and authoritarian regime who is attacking our Ukrainian friends who are suffering daily, but unfortunately we haven't been able to stop, despite all the European Union and the Western world is on one side, and this one guy who is holding the nuclear weapons is ready to trigger and destroy this whole world. This is what happens when the countries create these personas, when they create these personalities who are indispensable. And we have experienced it, our community has experienced it back in 1984 when Indira Gandhi, who was a similar leader, totalitarian and authoritarian, who was out to destroy anyone who objects to her motives. And we suffered a lot, although she has been killed later on. But our nation, Sikh nation, has determined ever since that if they have to survive in this world, especially in Southeast Asia, they have to diversify themselves. They have to work with the other states, with other countries who are of similar ideals, like United States, Canada, and other countries, and work together to make sure that we stand up against these authoritarian regimes and save our brothers and sisters all around the world. So I would like everybody who came over here, thank you very much on the backdrop of commemorating 1984, June 1st to June 8th. It's a watershed moment for our community when we decide that from now on we have to look for our own freedom, and we have to look for our own way forward in order to survive in this world. And thank you very much. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
I want to thank everybody who participated in this prayer service for victims of violence. I want to thank Congresswoman Mary Gay Scanlon, Congressman David Valadao, and particularly our Patrick Meehan, who has been instrumental in getting this thing off the ground. Just want to thank the Uyghur community and Rohingyas and our Ukrainian friends for participating in this service for victims of violence. As you are well aware what's going on in Ukraine, which has already been talked about, I want to touch a little bit on what happened to the Sikhs. This is a crucial week, crucial month for the Sikhs. In June 1st, 1984, when the forces of Indian Army under the orders of Indira Gandhi attacked Sikhs' most sacred shrine, and they picked a day which was the martyrdom day of the founder of Amritsar and Darbar Sahib, our fifth Guru, Guru Arjan Dev, particularly because on that day more than 100,000 Sikhs gathered to pay homage to the Guru. In this attack, thousands of innocent pilgrims were slaughtered by Indian Army, and those who were found alive were cuffed in the back with their turbans and shot at point blank range. And the whole world media was not aware of it because everything was censored by Indian media. So this is the story of the Sikhs who were the victims of violence. That again happened in November of that year in 1984, post assassination of Indira Gandhi. So we join with Rohingyas, with Uyghurs, with Ukrainian friends in this hour so that we can pray together and for the peace for the whole mankind. And once again, I want to thank everybody who participated in this event. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you very much.
I'd like to just share about the experience my travels to Ukraine. I was there with the United Sikhs NGO for 31 days. I want to ask this question, or ask all of you who are listening to this through this important medium of media, that what do you think when you sleep in the night for the next morning? I'm sure you all have a lot of thoughts in your mind, but the biggest thing that people think over there in Ukraine right now is that hopefully a missile will not hit their home. I met a 72-year-old mechanical engineer, Galina, who is living in an apartment complex whose middle area is completely bombed by the Russian missiles. And she runs her day by the battery packs that the NGOs provide her. And those battery packs are used to actually serve as electricity in her home. And also the food that is given on a bi-weekly basis is what she lives on. A father who works for the railway sector has sent his wife and children to Finland, and the only way they were able to go was because they had to cross the borders and go inside. And over there, the first train that left was to Finland, and they boarded the train. So this is the current situation in Ukraine right now. As a humanitarian NGO working over there from the last 3 months, I can tell you that there's a huge need. I'm thankful to our Ukrainian friends, who are here, and to the congressman to bring everybody from other places. But I wanted to share my real experience right on the ground and the volunteers that are serving. We are based in Kharkiv, in Kyiv, and in Shahini. Just yesterday, 19 people were killed in Kharkiv by the missiles that struck from the Russian side into a market complex. And I have just received the pictures, and it's shocking and gruesome to see all of that. Again, standing in solidarity with all the faith communities, and such an important event. Thank you to the people who are watching the media to make sure that we stand in solidarity with Ukraine and for the human rights abuses that have taken place in the Sikh community in 1984. Thank you.
My name is Michael Salkiu. I am the Executive Vice President of the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America, as well as the Director of its DC Public Affairs Bureau called the Ukrainian National Information Service. It's a pleasure representing the Ukrainian community here, along with Sikh Americans, as we all bring attention to violence against religious denominations and religious minorities. We know very much what violence is as a Ukrainian American community, obviously having experienced for the past 100+ days an unprovoked, brutal war waged by the aggressor from Moscow against Ukraine. And in that particular war, it's not just a war against militaries, it's a war against actual peoples, it's a war against the society. And given that every religious denomination, as its moral foundation, basically has a compass of good versus evil, this war is a war of good versus evil. We must stop this war. We must prevent similar wars from happening in the future. But if we don't stop this particular war, it will have its ramifications throughout the rest of the world. So we join with the Sikh people in looking for peace, peace in Ukraine, peace in the entire world, for the goodness of humanity and for the goodness of world society. Thank you.
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਕੈਪੀਟਲ ਹਿੱਲ ਤੇ ਪੀਸ ਮੋਨੂਮੈਂਟ ਤੇ ਕੈਪੀਟਲ ਦੀ ਬੈਕ ਡ੍ਰੌਪ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ 1984 ਦੇ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਸ਼ਹੀਦਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਯਾਦ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ, ਉੱਥੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਸਾਡੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਸਿਸਟਰ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀਜ਼ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ, ਰੋਹਿੰਗਿਆਜ਼, ਯੂਕਰੇਨੀਅਨਸ, ਦਲਿਤਸ, ਜਿੰਨਾ ਵੀ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਤੇ ਜਿਊਜ਼ ਐਂਡ ਕ੍ਰਿਸਚੀਅਨਸ, ਪਿਛਲੇ ਸਮੇਂ 'ਚ ਜਿੰਨਾ ਵੀ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਤੇ ਕਿਤੇ ਵੀ ਤਸ਼ੱਦਦ ਹੋਇਆ, ਕਿਤੇ ਵਾਇਲੈਂਸ ਹੋਈ ਆ, ਅਸੀਂ ਗੁਰੂ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਦੇ ਸਿਧਾਂਤ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਚੱਲਦਿਆਂ ਹੋਇਆਂ, ਸਰਬੱਤ ਦੇ ਭਲੇ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਅੱਗੇ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਚੱਲਦਿਆਂ ਹੋਇਆਂ, ਅਸੀਂ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਸੋਚਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਅਸੀਂ ਸਮੁੱਚੀ ਮਾਨਵਤਾ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਸੋਚਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਇਕੱਤਰ ਹੋ ਕੇ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀਆਂ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ 'ਤੇ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਤਸ਼ੱਦਦ ਹੋਏ ਆ, ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਇਸ਼ੂਜ਼ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਾਂਗਰਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਾਈਲਾਈਟ ਕੀਤਾ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।